Native American style flute creates a beautiful and haunting music, and virtually anyone can do it. Unfortunately, so many beginners give up in frustration when some simple techniques I'm going to try showing here would allow them to keep going. Now, first off, your flute that you have is probably a pentatonic scale flute. This is mostly what is made today. And you'll have either 5 holes or 6 holes. Now, if you have a 5-hole flute, just ignore what I'm going to say. But if you have a 6-hole flute, the 3rd hole down from the mouthpiece, put a piece of tape, leather or both, cover up that hole so it's airtight, and ignore it for now. Once you get the reflex reaction of covering your holes up with your fingers, you can remove it and maybe practice some other techniques that are available. As you see here, I have a piece of leather tied over it. And one question I'm asked quite often is, where should I put my fingers, hands? Which hand on top, which hand bottom? It doesn't matter which is more comfortable for you, though I've seen in general, if you're right or left hand, a dominant side, use that one on the bottom, and it'll probably be easier. You put your other hand on top. Now, I want you to stay within the pentatonic scale, and by that I mean don't leave holes open above your fingers that are keeping other holes closed. Start from the bottom, work your way up and back down. And when you're covering your fingers, don't try using the pad of your fingers and going downward. Just lay them across the holes, but not like a tin whistle or penny whistle where they lay across their fingers off. Just the pads of the fingers, and just in that right amount of tightness. Don't grip it hard. And I say that because once you lift all your fingers up, leaving your other fingers on hand, you can still control your flute. All fingers against the flute. Now, when you're playing, you're seeing 5 notes, and you're thinking, well, what can I play with only 5 notes? Well, you have a lot more notes, and even with just playing within the pentatonic scale. You have 2 notes, which are what they call overblow notes, and 1 note that goes downward by partially covering the end of the flute. Go into the overblow notes first. Go working your way all the way to the top where your holes are all open. Cover the bottom 2 holes to the foot of the flute and overblow. Blow harder. 1 more note above it is lift up the very bottom finger, then replace the finger above the 1 finger that's still on the flute. This is again all within the pentatonic scale. Now the other note I mentioned gets a little touchy depending on who made the flute and what style of flute is. Some flutes will have no holes below your finger holes. Others will. They'll call that tuning hole. Now, even though only 1 hole is needed for tuning, sometimes they'll put 1, 2, or 4 holes in this. And if the opening is larger than what it was actually required, you might not be able to create this note. What you do is just partially cover the end of the flute with no tuning holes. Or with a flute that does have tuning holes, just put the whole end of the flute down, like say against your leg. Practice with it and see whatever works and is required for that. Now, of course, if you're playing a short flute, small flute, it's a little hard to reach your bottom of your leg. What you can do is just push it against your shirt, in front of yourself. Okay, now into some of the effects that you've probably heard. Once you start getting your fingerings down, The vibrato, first off, comes from your lungs and actually your diaphragm. You want to be breathing in and out through the diaphragm part of your lungs. Exhaling. And by using your cheeks also, will create that vibrato effect. Just work on it. Practice is the only way you'll get it down. Another effect is a trilling. Well, unfortunately, there's two ways of doing this. One, if you can roll your R's while blowing into the flute, will create a trilling. I can't, unfortunately. I'm born with what you call a high palate. I use a gargling method. If you can, try to practice both. You actually get two different sounds, slightly different. Okay, now bending a note is done by lifting a finger up and back down slowly. You can slide it off, lift it up. One other effect would be tonguing, which, like it says, is on the end of the flute, on your mouthpiece. As you're blowing out, press your tongue quickly against the end of the flute. Okay, now later on, once you get a little practice, you can start using what, like I was saying about cross-fingering. That's where leaving different holes open, which will create your flats and sharps of the chromatic scale, or the keyboard, I should say. Which uses the chromatic scale, and get many more notes. If you're using the half-hole method, two techniques, and you'll probably use them both. One is just slowly roll your finger up off the hole. Create your half note. The other is just to bring your finger down on it. Now that, like I say, takes time to build up again that reflex reaction before you want to attempt this. Maybe it'll be months down the line. All right. Now, if you have any questions on this, just write me an email here on this website. I'll try to help with everything you can think of. Thank you.